Let me tell you about Five Nights at Freddy's. Now, this is just my own understanding of the material as of May 7th, 2022, and I'm not claiming perfect accuracy. I'm also intentionally leaving out many details in favor of building a solid base without being here all day. I've been working on gathering the facts with their sources noted because there's a lot of theorizing involved in understanding this story, and it's not always clear what things are based on, but I haven't finished that project yet, and this video isn't intended to be so thorough. I'll do my best to be clear when I'm making things up, but if you want to be sure, you'll have to go to the source yourself, which I recommend anyway because it's cool and funny. The other thing to note is that this is a horror series. I won't show the jump scares, but there will be talk of child murder and gruesome injuries. Created by Scott Cawthon, the first game, Five Nights at Freddy's, was released in August 2014. You play as a security guard at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, trying to stay safe from the restaurant's rogue animatronics from midnight until 6 a.m. through careful use of the camera system and your limited power supply. Failure means the player character gets stuffed in an animatronic, and the player gets a jump scare. It is established that Fazbear Entertainment does not prioritize employee safety. The characters featured in this game are Freddy Fazbear, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, the recorded voice of Phone Guy giving you instructions and sharing bits of story, and occasionally the mysterious Golden Freddy. The name on the measly check you receive at the end of the week is Mike Schmidt. After the titular 5 nights, you have the option to play a more difficult 6th night, and then a custom night in which the animatronics difficulty levels can be set manually. This is a recurring structure in a lot of FNAF games. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 was released in November 2014, and the basic premise is the same, though you're in a different building and there are more characters to keep track of. The animatronics here are Toy Freddy, Toy Bonnie, Toy Chica, Mangle, the puppet, Withered Freddy, Withered Bonnie, Withered Chica, Withered Foxy, Balloon Boy, and Golden Freddy. The calls you receive from Phone Guy help establish FNAF 2 as a prequel to the first game, because Phone Guy presumably dies at the end of FNAF 1. Your name on the check is Jeremy Fitzgerald. FNAF 2 also includes a handful of mini-games that suggest further story information and introduce Purple Guy. Five Nights at Freddy's 3, released in March 2015, takes place at Fazbear's Fright, an upcoming horror attraction at an amusement park inspired by the spooky history of the then-closed pizzerias. The only physical threat is Springtrap, but you also have to deal with hallucinations: Phantom Freddy, Chica, Foxy, Mangle, Balloon Boy, and Puppet. There's a different person on the phone here who we call Phone Dude. We do hear old recordings of Phone Guy, training tapes from the past. There are mini-games here too, and they affect the way the game ends. Five Nights at Freddy's 4, from July 2015, is an even bigger change, taking place in a bedroom and relying mostly on sound. The antagonists are Nightmare Freddy, the Freddles, Nightmare Bonnie, Nightmare Chica, Nightmare Foxy, Nightmare, and Nightmare Fredbear, as well as Plushtrap. There's also a Halloween-themed version. In Between Nights is the longest minigame yet. Five Nights at Freddy's sister location was released in October 2016. It takes place at Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental. The story is less separated from the main gameplay here, and every night you're doing something different. The characters are Circus Baby and the Biddy Babs, Ballora and the Mini-Renas, Funtime Freddy and Bonbon, and Funtime Foxy, Ennard, a combination of the others, and Hand Unit, who gives you your instructions. The name you're given is Eggs Benedict, but it becomes clear that you're playing as Michael Afton. There are 2 different endings to this game. Five Nights at Freddy's Pizzeria Simulator came out in December 2017 and takes place at a new Freddy Fazbear's Pizza place. You're a Fazbear Entertainment franchisee, and while you still have to keep safe in an office, a lot of the gameplay has to do with building up your restaurant. There are lots of animatronics available to purchase, but Molten Freddy, Scrap Trap, Scrap Baby, and Lefty show up in the alley outside. You get instructions from 2 places, Tutorial Unit and Cassette Man, also known as Henry. With a higher than usual number of decision-making opportunities, this game has 6 possible endings. Ultimate Custom Night, from June 2018, takes place in a security office with no clear connection to the real world, and features a large cast of characters we've seen before. This is the last game before Steel Wool Studios got involved and closes off what I consider the original story, so before introducing the rest of the games, I'm going to try to explain what that story is. I'll just refrain from getting into timing-related information for the most part because I'm continually trying to put all of that together and the snags are never ending. Once upon a time, William Afton and Henry Emily started a restaurant called Fredbear's Family Diner, home to Fredbear and Spring Bonnie. These spring-lock suits could operate as independent animatronics, but the mechanical parts could also be compressed to the sides to make room for a person to wear the suit as a costume. Later came Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, the first of many, home to Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, who are just regular animatronics. It is not known how many spring-lock suits were made, but sometime before FNAF 2, they were retired due to their extreme danger. The old training tapes in FNAF 3 warn employees that bumping the spring locks or getting moisture on them, like by breathing, might release them, which would hurt, probably to death. The newspaper articles in FNAF 1 explain that sometime in the past, a total of 5 children were lured into a back room of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza by a man dressed as a company mascot. The mini-games in FNAF 2 introduce this villain, Purple Guy, also known as William Afton. The newspapers go on to say that he was captured and charged, but the children were never found. It eventually becomes clear that this is because their bodies were hidden inside the animatronics. It also becomes clear that those children are haunting the animatronics, and this is the real reason for their active state. The withered animatronics in FNAF 2 are from the previous location, which has a bad reputation and has been abandoned for a while. Efforts were begun to repair them and retrofit them with new technology, but now they're just used for parts. They smell. My interpretation is that those animatronics are active performers at the Freddy Fazbear's Pizza where the newspaper article murders take place, and when that place eventually closes, they are kept until the FNAF 2 location opens, where they are not put on stage. When that place quickly closes, they are kept until the FNAF 1 location opens and repaired to the state in which we see them in that game. The FNAF 2 location has only been open for 1 week when the game starts. Fazbear Entertainment is trying to shake off its negative image. The toy animatronics are expensive new models with advanced mobility and facial recognition linked to a criminal database. But they're not off to a great start. The previous night guard was switched to the day shift after complaining about conditions. By the 3rd night, rumors of a tragedy have started to spread. The day guard reported nothing unusual. An investigation begins, and the animatronics start behaving strangely, staring at adults and acting somewhat aggressively towards staff. The next day, the building is on lockdown, and the day shift guard position has opened up. Phone Guy is struggling to contact the owner of the long-closed Fredbear's Family Diner, suggesting he would not recognize William Afton if he came back around to try more murders. The next day, the place has been closed down. There was a spare yellow suit in the back, and someone used it. One of the mini-games that might show up if you get killed in FNAF 2 shows the pizzeria in its current state, with the toys on stage, the withered animatronics in parts and services, Mangle in Kids Cove, and the puppet's big gift box sitting open. There are slumped dead bodies and pools of blood scattered throughout. The player controls withered Freddy following the puppet around. Letters are called out in the background spelling "Save Them." Sometimes you encounter Golden Freddy, sometimes you encounter Purple Guy, and when the game ends, the screen says, "You can't." Despite the tumultuous state of the FNAF 2 location by the end of the week, there is one more event scheduled for the next day, a birthday party, and Jeremy Fitzgerald will be the day guard. In FNAF 1, Phone Guy says that the animatronics are no longer allowed to walk around during the day following the Bite of 87, which left somebody alive but missing a frontal lobe. FNAF 2 takes place in 1987, and although the bite never comes up directly, there is a solid possibility that Jeremy gets bitten, especially since the temporally mysterious custom night for FNAF 2 is played by Fritz Smith instead. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza closes after just a few weeks, and the new animatronics are scrapped. Mangle seems to have been created sometime in between the original set and the toys. They were an attempt to make a more kid-friendly Foxy design, but after being torn apart by toddlers every day, the staff eventually gave up on repairs and let the kids play take apart and put back together. Since there's no toy Foxy and the toys were also intended to be kid-friendly redesigns, it's easy to group them together, but the way Phone Guy talks about Mangle convinces me they've been around for longer. Plus, there's a trace of Mangle in the FNAF 4 end-of-night minigames. Fredbear's Family Diner also shows up in the FNAF 4 end-of-night mini-games, which count down the days to the Crying Child's birthday party. We see the Crying Child in a bedroom with a Fredbear stuffed animal on the bed and a Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and headless Foxy in the corner, his friends. Fredbear's eyes track the Crying Child's movements. On every screen that doesn't have another representation of Fredbear somewhere, the toy Fredbear is there watching. Yellow text that seems to be Fredbear comforts the crying child and tells him where to go. The first day, he's been locked in his room. The next, his older brother jumps out from behind the TV wearing a Foxy mask to startle him. This TV can play a Fredbear and Friends show, copyright 1983. Later, the crying child has been left at Fredbear's family diner, where Purple Guy works. The daily torments culminate in party day at the restaurant. The crying child is surrounded by 4 older kids, including his Foxy masked brother. The others wear Bonnie, Chica, and Freddy masks. Amused by how frightened the crying child is, they carry him up to the stage where Spring Bonnie and Fredbear stand. He's lifted to Fredbear's mouth to pretend to kiss him, but his head goes inside the mouth. He's wriggling and crying, and the jaws clamp down. The laughter stops. Then we see the crying child in darkness with his pile of toys, and the gray text associated with his brother says, "Can you hear me? I don't know if you can hear me. I'm sorry." Then as the toys disappear one by one, light yellow text says, "You're broken. We are still your friends. Do you still believe that? I'm still here. I will put you back together." Finally, the crying child disappears, and there is a faint noise like a flatline on a heart monitor. While not confirmed in-game, a common fan interpretation is that the older brother is Michael Afton, making the crying child another of William's sons. Also, some people call the crying child Evan, mostly just so that he has a name. FNAF 3 takes place in the days leading up to the planned opening of Fazbear's Fright. Alas, the attraction is not to be, as a newspaper article reveals that it burns to the ground at the end of the week. This is attributed to faulty wiring, a very likely explanation considering the vintage equipment is so authentic that you start to hallucinate if you don't keep rebooting the ventilation system. However, the fire alternatively may have been someone's hands-on attempt to rid the world of the most authentic of the props Phone Dude brought in, Springtrap. The old Phone Guy tapes we hear in FNAF 3 explain that every location was built with a safe room, hidden to customers, invisible to animatronics, and always off camera. This explains why we didn't see the safe room in FNAF 1, the same location as the FNAF 3 end-of-night minigames. These minigames show Purple Guy disassembling Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, then later being chased around in the safe room by 5 gray crying ghosts. He puts on the Spring Bonnie suit that's apparently being stored there, and the spring locks release, crushing him inside. At some point, all the safe rooms are sealed and intentionally forgotten, until Phone Dude opens one up, and Fazbear's Fright is introduced to Springtrap, the mutilated remains of Purple Guy merged with the Spring Bonnie suit, and somehow living on. The rest of the minigames in FNAF 3 reinforce the idea that the animatronics are haunted by the murdered children. Before all that, apart from his collaboration with Henry, William Afton also created Afton Robotics. These include Circus Baby, Funtime Freddy and Bon Bon, Funtime Foxy, and Ballora. Unlike the other animatronics, this group seems to have some level of artificial intelligence. Their blueprints suggest that they were specifically created to lure and capture children, unusual design choices that were apparently just subtle enough to be overshadowed by the technical accomplishments. Unfortunately, William's daughter Elizabeth couldn't understand why she was the only child not allowed to play with the delightful Circus Baby. When the two were alone, Circus Baby's programming kicked in, and she drew Elizabeth closer with an ice cream cone, then snapped the girl up with the giant claw in her stomach. The details aren't clear, but Elizabeth is certainly haunting Circus Baby to some extent. Despite being comparatively story-centric, Sister Location is quite vague about everything, but the atmosphere is delicious. These animatronics were intended for a restaurant called Circus Baby's Pizza World, but in Sister Location, they're being rented out for private parties from Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental. It's very unclear who's responsible for them here or what their days actually look like. There are human technicians employed to address their apparent frequent malfunctions, but they don't know much. There are cameras, but we don't see who's watching them. When Michael Afton goes to work here, he gets his instructions from Model 5 of the Handyman's Robotics and Unit Repair System, the glitchy little hand unit. His primary responsibility is administering controlled shocks to the animatronics and trying not to get killed, like it's implied his predecessor was. Circus Baby seems to be helping him, occasionally giving him instructions that conflict with hand units. One night, she kidnaps Michael, hiding him inside a spring-lock suit she says was intended for her pizzeria but deemed too dangerous. They watch as Ballora is brought to the scooping room. Ballora hasn't learned to pretend the way Circus Baby has. The next day, Circus Baby asks for Michael's help destroying the bad part of her that can't be fixed and tells him to meet her in the scooping room. There, he hears Circus Baby's voice saying that there's nowhere for them to hide here, nowhere to go like there would be if they looked like Michael. This turns out to be Ennard, an amalgamation of all the animatronics. Michael gets scooped and becomes Ennard's disguise. This only lasts for a little while, though, as his body doesn't hold up and Ennard retreats into the gutter. The crumpled purple Michael finds that somehow he is still alive, which Circus Baby expected would be the case. This might be because the scooper injected him with something called Remnant, as shown on the Afton Robotics blueprint that Henry gets his hands on in Pizzeria Simulator. Like all the player characters, Michael doesn't speak during the main game, so the most we know about how he's interpreting the situation comes from his speech at the end. Aside from confirming his identity, it suggests that William told him to come here, to find Circus Baby or Elizabeth and put her back together, and Michael believes he has succeeded. He also believes the animatronics mistook him for William. He doesn't know why he's not dead, but his new goal is to find his father. This takes place in the same general section of the timeline as FNAF 3. Chances are it was really Springtrap who contacted Michael. Here's my ranking of the games from most to least likely that Michael Afton is the protagonist. 1. Sister Location. It's not directly stated, but there's solid evidence. 2. Pizzeria Simulator. I haven't explained that story yet, but basically there's no characters we're introduced to other than Michael for whom it would make sense to get singled out the way the player character is. 3. FNAF 3. This could be part of Michael's attempt to find William, but I don't think it has to be. 4. FNAF 1. Maybe Mike Schmidt is Michael's alias, whatever. 5. FNAF 2, definitely Jeremy, and Ultimate Custom Night, definitely William. I'm just avoiding the FNAF 4 Nightmare Bedroom because I really don't know what to think about it. There are many theories in the world, but none I'm passionate about. On that topic, in Sister Location, the alternate non-canon ending you get by not following Circus Baby to the scooping room is a bit of regular 12-6 FNAF gameplay in the private room, and typing 1983 in the keypad results in the screen showing places from FNAF 4, the bedroom from 2 high angles, and the hallway where we play fun with Plushtrap. When Michael goes home between shifts, he watches The Immortal and the Restless, a show in which Clara struggles to get Vlad the Vampire to admit that her suspiciously vampiric son is his too, to accept the responsibilities of fatherhood, or at least pay child support. After burning down his house, she says she's keeping the diamond ring, but when Vlad reveals he found it in a kid's meal, she takes it as a sign that he does care after all. Stepping outside the game world for a moment, there's an activity book called the Survival Logbook, which was published in December 2017. It's styled as a logbook for a new Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Night Guard, with journal prompts and quizzes for the reader to fill out. It also appears to have been previously owned by Michael Afton, and his sketches and bitter jokes are sprinkled throughout. I don't know the official status of its canonicity, but my current understanding of the plot is inordinately jeopardized by taking it into account, so I just view it as jokes and character tidbits. In the Survival Logbook, Michael writes that he relates to Clara from The Immortal and the Restless because, quote, "everything about this place is crazy and no one seems to notice except me." Another important person is Henry's daughter, who we call Charlie because he has a daughter named Charlie in the novels. Actually, that's where the names Henry and William come from too. Henry built the puppet to protect Charlie. It was meant to keep her inside Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, but one night it was prevented, and Purple Guy drove up and killed her. The puppet eventually made it to her body, breaking down in the rain, and Charlie possessed it. This was before the 5 murders, and the Give Gifts, Give Life minigame in FNAF 2 implies that the haunted puppet was responsible for the other possessions to some extent. In Pizzeria Simulator, the puppet is contained in an animatronic called Lefty, specifically built for this purpose, as shown on the Lefty blueprint. On the surface, the Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place that opens in Washington County, Utah, is a straightforward attempt by Fazbear Entertainment to rebrand. But Henry has a different plan. After discovering that William was experimenting with Remnant, horrified that the murdered children weren't able to rest, and feeling responsible for not having done more to stop his former friend after his daughter was killed, he gathers everyone in the restaurant. The Remnant-filled animatronics, currently in the form of Scrap Baby and Molten Freddy, are trapped in a maze chasing illusions Henry creates. William, now Scraptrap, claims not to have fallen for the deception but is too curious to stay away. As mentioned, Lefty holds whatever is left of Charlie, and if the player character is Michael, that means that aside from Phone Guy, who's already gone, every major character in the story is present when Henry sets it all on fire. The peaceful gravestones were shown at the end offer the names of some of the children: Gabriel, who was in Freddy, Fritz in Foxy, Susie in Chica, and Jeremy in Bonnie. The Fruity Maze minigame implies that one child was lured away by the rabbit-suited William with the promise of reuniting with a pet thought dead. The Midnight Motorist minigame implies that another ran off to Freddy's to escape an abusive parent. At least, that's the interpretation I'm leaning towards now, though that particular minigame is vaguer than most. Ultimate Custom Night is one final step for William and the children. Cassidy, the unusually powerful spirit in Golden Freddy, has apparently delayed the release Henry attempts in Pizzeria Simulator for the purpose of punishing William, basically giving him a taste of his own medicine. Unlike in previous games where the jump scare resets the timeline, death here is not permanent. The 8th FNAF game, Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted, was released in May 2019. It was developed by Steelwool Studios and released as a virtual reality game. The story is, you're playing a Five Nights at Freddy's virtual reality game. All the FNAF games now exist in-universe, and in order to sell merch and reinforce the narrative that the entire story is fictional rather than being based on real events that don't reflect well on the company, Fazbear Entertainment has created the game you're playing now. It's immediately apparent that things are being covered up even within this game, and there might be real risks to playing it. The game was originally worked on by a different development team who were pulled from the project after something strange got into the code. As you play, a grinning yellow rabbit with purple eyes slowly becomes more visible, waving at you in the main room. This is Glitchtrap. The Fazbear Virtual Experience includes a total of 40 mini-games, some recreations of previous FNAF games and some new. You win prizes like stuffed animals and themed treats, which can then be acquired at the prize counter in the main room. The final minigame, Pizza Party, is a maze-like exploration of various locations from multiple games. Scrawled all over are big, disorienting arrows and instructions like "Find me," "This way," and "Do you trust me?" After climbing a ventilation shaft to your pizza party, Glitchtrap appears and gestures for you to follow him through the curtains. You end up on stage looking out at the main room, apparently through Freddy Fazbear's eyes. The credits roll, and the instructional voice reassures you that you have seen everything there is to see. Of course, that isn't true. Somebody on the first development team created a series of tapes and hid them throughout the game. Tape Girl describes the mysterious malicious code that showed up after the client sent the team some old circuit boards and other apparent junk, telling them that scanning it would save them some work. Surprisingly, there was usable code on some of it, which took hold independently and started changing things. This seems to be when Glitchtrap was first seen. A game tester named Jeremy starts getting nightmares, but he keeps returning to the game, where he seems to be talking to somebody. Unsurprisingly, his safety is considered secondary to making sure nothing incriminating gets out, and he winds up fully caught by the game and cuts off his face with a paper slicer or something. In the final days before the game switches hands, Tape Girl attempts to identify and isolate the anomaly so the next tester can get rid of it. Then she realizes it's attached itself to her logs and decides to destroy them, hoping that will eradicate the problem. But the protection she's created for the logs prevents her from deleting them, so instead, she breaks the files into pieces and the anomaly with them. She instructs the next tester to try and get their team to abandon development and to hide the logs to keep them unassembled. Of course, you don't get to hear this tape until you've already found and reassembled the majority. Finally, Tape Girl explains that the anomaly wants to escape through someone, and you might be able to kill it if you cause a hard restart of the game and flush the memory while it's starting to merge with you. Finding all the tapes but failing to follow the instructions leads to Glitchtrap apparently taking over your body and now able to escape the game. Following the instructions ends with Glitchtrap trapped in a room, shushing you as he backs into the darkness. Not free, but not destroyed either. You receive a Glitchtrap stuffed animal. The Curse of Dreadbear DLC introduces 10 new mini-games with a Halloween theme. In the Corn Maze, collecting all 4 keys reveals a 5th glitchy purple key, which opens a different Game 1 room with a white rabbit mask on the table. Wearing the mask while holding the Glitchtrap toy plays a strange-sounding woman's voice, probably talking to Glitchtrap as she confirms that she's understood her instructions and nobody suspects anything. This character returns in Five Nights at Freddy's Special Delivery, an augmented reality mobile game developed by Illumix and released in November 2019. Fazbear Funtime Service is delivering animatronics right to your house, actual physical recreations of all your favorite characters. Due to what appears to be a pretty deep-seated malfunction, rather than entertaining you, the animatronics attack. There are 20 characters in the catalog, plus many themed skins that were added for various events after the game's release. Surviving an encounter earns you XP to unlock further levels. If you have friends who also have the game, you can send animatronics to them. You can collect various parts, as well as Remnant, which appears as floating balls of light or shadow. There's an email function with tips on how to play and so on, but you also receive some emails that weren't intended for you. Some are sent from Luis Cabrera, an IT worker, and addressed to Ness, checking in on her after some internet searches at work triggered red flag reports. Others concern a virus that was released after scanning an old circuit board. Now, I don't feel confident explaining the story in full detail past this point. Even though Security Breach was my introduction to FNAF, I promptly went back to the beginning and haven't gone as deep with the newer material yet. Should I have waited to make this video? Quite possibly, but I didn't want to. Let's move on to the next summary. The most recent game, Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach, was developed by Steelwool Studios and released in December 2021. You play as a young boy named Gregory trying to survive a night at Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizzaplex. This entertainment complex is centered around its animatronic band, Glamrock Freddy, Glamrock Chica, Montgomery Gator, and Roxanne Wolf. Other characters include the daycare attendant, who appears in sun or moon form depending on the lighting, and the enormous DJ Music Man. There used to be a Glamrock Bonnie, but he's been decommissioned. These animatronics have pretty advanced AI, but they're not in great shape. Chica has an irresistible craving for anything pizza and has been found eating from the garbage. Monty goes on destructive rampages. Roxy is obsessed with being seen as the best. Freddy seems more stable than the others, but the game starts with him malfunctioning during a performance. The place is mostly staffed by robots, as human employees are gradually laid off, despite putting up with the really terrible working conditions. At night, the only human present is Vanessa, who is hired as head of security despite a lack of qualifications due to an internal reference from an unnamed source. Gregory is on the run from Vanessa, and all the animatronics are helping hunt him down except for Freddy. Freddy has a positive relationship with the other animatronics and is surprised that they're trying to hurt Gregory. It seems his malfunction spared him from whatever is influencing the others. There is a compartment in Freddy's chest that Gregory can hide inside, but Freddy runs out of power often. When apart, the two communicate via the Fazwatch. Gregory has the option to upgrade Freddy by incapacitating the other animatronics and stealing their parts, Chica's experimental voice box which interferes with technology, Monty's extra powerful claws intended to let him play the bass, and Roxy's fancy eyes meant to help her win on the racetrack. That racetrack is currently under construction as the foundation keeps cracking and power is being drained underground. One of the 6 endings available in this game is reached by investigating an old elevator shaft leading into the sinkhole under Roxy Raceway and discovering the ruins of the Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place from Pizzeria Simulator and the regretfully still active ruins of William Afton. Other endings involve Vanny, the woman in the white bunny costume. One reveals that Gregory is homeless and implies that Vanny has been killing children. There's a series of Princess Quest games, the first of which originally appeared in the mobile port of Help Wanted. These seem to represent Glitchtrap's interactions with Vanny or Vanessa. You can find CDs with recordings of some pretty questionable therapy sessions that overlap with the events of the special delivery emails. I think that's most of it. I like this game because, as a fan of Sister Location, the massive, wrong location is very interesting to me, and the main animatronics are my buddies, but a lot of the story I just can't care about yet. There's one more game to mention. FNAF World is a spin-off RPG released in January 2016. It's not horror, more fantasy adventure. It features its own version of a bunch of characters from the other games and debuts some characters who don't appear in the main series until later. There are probably people who really like this game and could do this description justice, but though I've tried to look things up, I still don't know much about it. The novel trilogy was co-written by Scott Cawthon and Kira Breed-Risley. The Silver Eyes was published in 2015, The Twisted Ones in 2017, and The Fourth Closet in 2018. The story is completely separate from that of the games, but several characters, objects, and events turn up in both and highlight some recurring themes. The Silver Eyes tells the story of Henry's daughter Charlie as a young adult returning to her hometown of Hurricane, Utah, and reuniting with her childhood friends, John, Jessica, Carlton, Lamar, Marla, and Marla's little brother Jason. A decade before, their friend Michael was one of 5 children murdered at Charlie's father's restaurant, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, and now a scholarship dedicated to Michael is being introduced. While in town, the group decide to explore the abandoned site of the pizzeria and discover some haunted animatronics and an unsettling security guard going by the name Dave Miller. I don't want to reveal the whole plot because, unlike in the games, the story doesn't have to be pried out of the corners, and I like this trilogy. But the next two books focus on the mysteries of Charlie's past and the extent of both Henry and William's creations. The Twisted Ones introduces the concept of illusion discs, an impressive piece of technology that affects the appearance of things based on what people are expecting to see. The novel trilogy also exists in graphic novel form, though I haven't read those. The Fazbear Fright series began in 2019 and concluded last month. At the time of recording this, I've read 9 of the 12 books. The most accurate word I have for them is inconsistent. Each book contains 3 stories, followed by an entry in the story that ties the books together. Scott Cawthon's name is on every book, along with a varying group of co-authors. Ellie Cooper and Andrea Wagoner are the most prolific, but Carly Ann West and Kelly Parra have also contributed. The stories take place in a variety of FNAF-related contexts. Often, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is an active restaurant chain. Sometimes it's abandoned. Sometimes the main character just finds a strange toy. Overall, these stories reinforce the idea that FNAF is a world of ghosts based in technology, but crucially, powered by strong emotions. And that is the end of my video about Five Nights at Freddy's. Hopefully my posts will make more sense now, at least a little bit. Feel free to comment with clarifying questions, though it's a toss-up whether I'll be able to answer them, or if you already know this stuff and you think I missed something important, you can help with that too. Bye!